keeps happening. A show starts with incredible writing, characters people would quite literally defend with their lives, and a story so good that staying up until 4 in the morning watching just one more episode suddenly seems like a completely rational life decision. And then something happens. The writing gets weird. Characters start making decisions that would concern a medical professional. Storylines go nowhere. And the same fan base that once spent years recommending the show to everyone they knew is now gathered around its corpse, asking, what the hell happened? And this isn't exactly rare. Game of Thrones, Dexter, How I Met Your Mother, Lost, all massive shows, all incredibly successful, and all have endings that still start arguments years later. At this point, it happens so often that it can't just be bad luck. So why do so many great TV shows fall apart? Well, ironically, the first problem is usually the exact thing every show desperately wants: success. Imagine you're a writer. You have an idea for a TV show. You know the characters, you know the story, maybe you even know exactly how it ends. Perfect. You pitch it, the show gets made, and somehow people actually watch it. Millions of people. Congratulations, you've won. Except, no. Because now a very nice man in a very expensive suit walks into the room and says, people love the show. Great. So we're making another season, okay, and another one, right? And maybe 3 more after that. But the main story ends next season, and this is where success starts becoming a problem. A story is supposed to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Revolutionary stuff, I know, but television has another factor: money. If a show is making enormous amounts of money, ending it at the perfect moment can suddenly seem like a rather inconvenient artistic decision. Why end something people are still watching? Why finish the story when you could simply keep the corpse moving for another 4 seasons? And you can feel when this happens. Characters stop developing because their arcs are already basically finished. Old problems mysteriously return. Couples break up for reasons that seem to have been generated by spinning a wheel. Communication problem. And suddenly, a story that used to feel like it was going somewhere is now just driving around looking for parking. This is why some shows don't necessarily become terrible overnight. They just slowly lose direction because the writers aren't telling the story anymore. They're babysitting a franchise. But sometimes the opposite happens. Sometimes the show doesn't get stretched. Sometimes everyone suddenly decides, right, we have 6 episodes, finish everything. Which brings us to the great panic button. Game of Thrones is probably the most obvious example here. For years, the show moved carefully. Politics mattered, conversations mattered. Characters could spend entire seasons slowly changing. Then, near the end, the show suddenly developed the pacing of a man who remembered he left the oven on. Entire character arcs were compressed. People started teleporting across Westeros. Decisions that should have taken episodes of development happened in minutes, and one of the biggest shows in television history essentially sprinted toward the finish line, fell over, and somehow set the track on fire. Now, whether you personally hated the ending isn't really the point. The bigger problem is pacing, because audiences will accept almost anything if you earn it. A good character becomes evil? Fine. Okay. Ill the hero? Sure. Let the villain win? Go ahead. Ruin my evening. But you have to build toward it. You can't spend 7 seasons carefully constructing a character and then, in the final hours, hit the become insane button. Character development isn't a software update. You can't just install Evil version 2.0 overnight. And this is one of the hardest things about endings. The beginning of a story creates possibilities. The ending has to destroy most of them. Every mystery needs an answer. Every major character needs some kind of conclusion. Every promise the story made is now waiting at your front door. And the fans? Oh, they've been waiting too, for 8 years. Completely calm and reasonable. Which brings us to the next problem. Fans have had way too much time to think and thinking. Imagine writing the first season of a show. You introduce a mysterious character. Maybe he has a strange scar. He looks at a door for 3 seconds. That's it. You thought it looked cool. Unfortunately, the internet exists. Within 12 hours, someone on Reddit has written a 9,000-word theory explaining how the scar represents ancient mythology, the door represents death, and the character is secretly the protagonist's father from an alternate timeline. There's a diagram. And the terrifying part, their idea is actually pretty good. This is what happens when millions of people spend years analyzing a story. Fans freeze frames, they analyze dialogue, they compare episodes, they create theories. Somebody will eventually notice that a coffee cup moved 3 centimeters between scenes and conclude that the entire show takes place inside a dying man's subconscious. And now the writers have a problem because expectations have become enormous. The ending can't just be good. It has to compete with every ending millions of viewers have imagined for years. This is especially dangerous for mystery-driven shows. When the finale arrives, the writers open a room containing 15 years of mysteries and unresolved storylines and realize they have 4 episodes left. Good luck. Characters become prisoners of themselves. There's another problem that doesn't get talked about enough. The longer a show runs, the harder it becomes to write its characters. In season 1, your character has endless room to grow. Maybe they're selfish, maybe they're weak, maybe they're afraid. Great. You have an arc. But after 5 seasons, they've faced their fears, they've fixed their relationships, they've defeated their enemies, they've learned their lesson. Wonderful. Now what? This is why long-running shows sometimes make characters repeat the same mistakes again and again. At this point, we're not watching character development. We're watching a man lose his save file every season. And writers do this because conflict is necessary. Happy, emotionally stable people with healthy communication skills are wonderful in real life. They are absolutely terrible for television. Writers need problems. And when a show runs for too long, sometimes the easiest way to create those problems is to make intelligent characters temporarily stupid. Suddenly, the strategist forgets how strategy works. The honest character lies for no reason. The couple that survived wars, death, and the apocalypse breaks up because someone saw a text message and refused to ask a follow-up question. And the audience notices, because there's a massive difference between this character made a bad decision and the writer needed this character to make a bad decision. And this is probably the uncomfortable answer. Maybe great shows keep failing at the end because endings are incredibly difficult. Think about it. To make a successful first season, you need to make people curious. To make a successful finale, you need to make them satisfied. Those are completely different jobs. A beginning asks, what happens next? An ending has to say, this is what it all meant. And after years of hype, theories, character development, interviews, trailers, Reddit arguments, and that one YouTuber who has uploaded 47 videos explaining why a chair in episode 3 is secretly the key to everything, maybe no ending can perfectly satisfy everyone. But there is a difference between an ending being controversial and an ending feeling rushed, confused, or completely disconnected from the story that came before it. People don't always need the ending they wanted. They need an ending that feels earned. Breaking Bad didn't give every character a happy ending. The Sopranos didn't even give everyone a clear ending. But people are still discussing those finales because they felt connected to how all the characters and the story matches. And maybe that's the real secret. A great ending doesn't need to shock everyone. It doesn't need to outsmart Reddit. It doesn't need a surprise villain, 3 plot twists, and a portal opening in the sky. It just needs to remember why people love the show in the first place. Because starting a great TV show is difficult, keeping it great is harder. But knowing when and how to end it is apparently where writers and producers start to struggle. And judging by television history, we should probably stop leaving the finale button next to the self-destruct button.